Ethical teachings of the Talmud. This is chapter 5. What we read here, with 10 tests, where Father Abram was tested, and he withstood them all, in order to make known how great was our father Abram's love for God. So Abraham, the first Jew, was tested by God many times, and he withstood all those tests. So we talk about from the very beginning, early on in his life, when he first understood and recognized that there was just one and only God, and that the pagan beliefs were a mistake, and he started to share that with others, and he almost paid for it with his life. That was a test. It was a test when God told him to move out to Israel, when he didn't know what would be in store for him. That was a test. Many other things in his life were a test from God, and he held strong to his faith and demonstrated, as we see here, his love for God. Now, these 10 things, this comes in continuation to all kinds of other 10s that this chapter talks about. 10 utterances that God said, 10 of all kinds of different things through history, and then other numbers that go through this chapter. Units of numbers of this and numbers of that. Now, obviously, this is not about trivia and about knowing which numbers of how much took place. Obviously, there's a lesson here. These chapters and the Torah in general are here to teach us something that we can live by. So what are we going to learn from the 10 tests of Avraham Avinu, of the first Jew? So we'll start with that by understanding what a test is. Now, if I've muted everybody, but if you would like to comment, just unmute yourself and comment. It's just in between. It's better to avoid the static. But feel free to unmute yourself for any questions or comments along the way. So our Mishnah said that the purpose of the tests and the 10 tests that Abraham withstood was to demonstrate the great love that Abraham had for God. And actually, a test is called in Hebrew a nisayon. Now let's look at that word so that we could understand what this could mean. A test is a nisayon. Nisayon is made up of 5 Hebrew letters, nun, samach, yud, vav, and nun. But here its root are these first 2 letters, nes. Nes, which would mean a flag, as the verse describes. Raising a flag is called the nes, arim nisi, raised by flag onto the heavens. So a flag can be described as a nes. So the nisayon, which is a trial, a test, something being put through to see how we come out on the other side, is also a flag, because it's a demonstration up on high for all to see of the commitment that the individual has. So the case of Abraham, his flag, his test was raising up and making this announcement of his great love and dedication to God, no matter what. But another thing about a nisayon and a test being a nes, a flag that's raised up on the hill, is actually not only that it's a demonstration of our commitment, but it lifts us up. It doesn't just demonstrate what we have going on, but it elevates and brings us to a higher place. We become that flag that's kind of elevated through the experience of the test. And what that means is that we have a commitment inside of us. We have an neshama, we have a soul, we have a spark, a connection to God buried deep inside, which is very powerful and very dedicated and committed no matter what. But we don't always know about that. We don't always recognize that. Definitely the people around us do not, but even we may not see it or appreciate it ourselves. What happens is, when we're tested, when God challenges us with something in our lives that tests our faith and tests our resolve and tests to see how committed are we truly to what God has in store for us. Hi, David. How committed are we truly to the mission and the ideals, the teachings that God sets forth for us in the Torah? That calls forth a deeper sense of conviction from inside of us. We need to dig deeper inside to find that kind of deeper and more powerful energy and sense of resolve to overcome the challenge. So the challenge and our triumphing and our overcoming that challenge actually elevates us. It's the nace, the challenge is the nace, it's the flag, not because it makes an announcement for somebody else, but because it elevates me. It brings up the individual, him or herself, to a greater place by revealing the neshama that is inside. Actually, the Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe, talked about this a lot at this time of the year. At this time of the year, meaning really tomorrow night, hi Mark, we'll be celebrating the 12th of Tammuz. And 12th of Tammuz is when the previous Lubavitch Rebbe, Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak, so he was the father-in-law of our Rebbe. He was, shall we say, the one-man battle, not one man in the sense of nobody doing it with him. All the Hasidim, all of his followers did this with him, but the only one who really stood up and faced the communist regime back in Russia early on in the 20s, in the 1920s, and said, no matter how determined they are to stamp out Judaism, we will be determined to keep Judaism alive, and sent his followers all throughout the country to teach the Torah, to keep synagogues and mikvahs open, and to keep the Jewish connection for every Jew. Of course, the Soviet secret police had enough of it, and in 1927, they arrested him and came really close to capital punishment. Thank God they cut that back to slave labor and exile and finally released him after just a few days on the 12th of Tammuz, which will be this Shabbat. So this is a time when we think about that kind of dedication, that kind of what we call Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, where a Jew, a Rebbe, and all of his followers, really, members of my own family, grandparents and great-grandparents, grew up in that environment and went through that experience, where a Jew is faced with a challenge, a regime such as the communist regime, which says there will be no more Judaism, we will stamp this all out. If you resist, we'll lock you up, we'll send you to Siberia or worse. And a Jew is forced to find within himself that kind of conviction and dedication which says, I'm still committed and I'll do whatever it takes to come through for what's right. When we do that, we're actually not only succeeding in keeping the mitzvah going and doing the right thing, but in revealing that neshama and that sense of connection and commitment that was always inside of us, but we never needed it. We never needed to dig that deep down, so it never came to fore and never came to be. Now that we've been tested and we were forced to work harder and to call on our deeper resolve, we're revealing that deeper part of ourselves, and that actually elevates us, which is why Nisayon is called a nes, lifting us up higher than where we started. That's also why we understand that in the time of the Galut, the time of the exile, the Jewish diaspora that precedes the coming of Mashiach that we hope and pray for very soon, there are a lot of tests and there are a lot of challenges of this nature where Jews are challenged and forced to find their inner resolve. Because when we reveal that neshama inside of us, when we reveal that deeper commitment inside of us, God does the same. There's a kind of cosmic reaction. God also reveals a deeper commitment. That also reveals a deeper connection, shall we call it, and a deeper expression of God's presence, which our world has yet to experience. That's what we're going to have when the Mashiach comes. God's presence will be known, will be felt, will be recognized. That's what's going to cause all the goodness and perfection of that time. Well, that is brought about, that comes to be by us revealing the deeper part of ourselves, by us revealing that deeper commitment that we have when we are tested, when we are challenged, but we hold strong and we prevail and persevere and come through the test. God also expresses that deeper sense of himself, that deeper revelation of God for our world to be able to experience, as we will when the Mashiach comes. Now, there is a very powerful story that I truly love that expresses this idea. Because we use the example of the communist persecution against, Jewish religion and Jewish identity, and putting literally your life on the line to overcome that. Now, thank God we don't live in such a time and such a place. But we do each face challenges in our own sense of commitment to what's right, and in our own sense of perseverance for the way of God and for the teachings of the Torah. We all have to call upon that inner resolve so that we should stay committed no matter what. And here's a story of an individual who went through that and how the Rebbe showed him the power of that test and how that lifts us up higher and closer to God. We're going to watch this as it's said by the rabbi who was behind it all in Yiddish, but it's subtitled in English so we can follow. Let's see here. And here we go.
European Union. Gewoon een business home, like vielen Shabbos. Und kommen zum Sachen Shabbos. Ich sag mal, ich kann sagen, guck mal, Shabbos sagt, nein, heintige Shabbos, heintige Weekend. Und er sagt nicht Shabbos, Weekend. Heute das in Manzine. Ich fahre zu Italien. Jeder Mal, wenn sagt, fährt zu Italien, guckt nicht zu mir in die Augen. Und einmal ich rede mit dem Herr hier, sagt mir, redet Shabbos, Kashrus. Aber ich habe getroffen vor einer Sache zurück an Meil in Italien. Und ich gemacht nach Flotte, ich gehe mit dem Hassan. Und sie ist das Schicksal. Und noch ein paar, ich fahre zu Italien. Und sagt mir, ich muss alles machen, vielen Shabbos, Kashrus, alles. Aber das ist Kenntnis. Das ist Mamisch. איך אומרים לי סיבוק בין השמיים? אולי. Sagt heute in der Schamaim, du hast das Problem, Babystar machen, Aziz, Heidisch. Und sagt mir, gegangen, dem Rober ab Kaiser, geht ab Kaiser. Kaiser gesagt, das hat mir aus Enorm, es gelernt einmal Reishi Sochen. Das ist dort Grill, von der Pizza, Mikro, das du verbrennen, das du machst. Und dann sagt ich, muss alles durchgehen. Das sind meine. Sagt mir, sehr fein. Sagt mir, ich weiß, als Asaf-Menschen sagen mir, du kannst machen nach Giur. Aber ich fühle, als die Giur ist eine heilige Sache. Und ich kann nicht nutzen, die Giur als auf mein Interesse. Weil ich fühle, sie will nicht nehmen, es ist nur an mir. Sie gewähnen, Shabbos mit Wochen, wo ich völlig Kiesle. Sagt ihm, ich fahre zum Reben, kommt zu mir. Kommt mir mit. Tov, er ist ein Jecke, זה טוב שין למד זין הזה, טוב שין למד Fortune zum Rennen gewinnt. Dann ist schon kommt zum Rennen und geht schon so Sonntag, der Rebbe teilt Dollar, das heißt, eigentlich sind der Rebbe mit Nehmen zusammen. Und eine Minute zu sagen, weil neben dem Rebbe steht aber ein Groner, der mit der Maske. Und einer, was sagt, der Welt, weil ich verstehe, weil jeder einer wird sagen noch ein Wort, der Rebbe darf stehen noch ein 12-3 Stunden. Der Rebbe bis einmal 4 Säge, 5 Säge und später gehen zu der Ziel. Und sie gewinnen die Ziel nach Schnee, du weißt, der Heinke gewinnen dort, sie gewinnen nach Schnee, oder? Du stehst bei dem Reben, du fragst dem Reben und der Rabbi Krone über gesehen, als einer Retter geschleppt. Und ob gesehen, als ein Mensch redet mehr, hat geschleppt die Häusen. Und ein Mensch ist nicht wie Yitzchak, nicht. Wie Jenneborg. Du rest zum Reben. Aus der Chance. Ist mit der Reihe und steht vor mir und steht vor mir. Und seht, also geht zum Regen, wird nicht keine Wochen sehr gut. Und sehr, wie sagt das? Der Nuss wird groß. Wir kennen, wird größer, wird nicht sport. Ja, der eine hat. Und sehr kenne ich mich trash und geformt von Belgium zu Amerika, dem Melund. Und es geht. Aber der Rebbe gibt ihm $1. Der Rebbe gibt $1, der Rebbe geht. Der Rebbe gibt ihm $1 und der Rebbe hält $1. Das ist viel Leben geworden, der kann ich sagen. Und der Rebbe guckt einfach wieder beschmeichelt. Das wird ein bisschen ruhiger. Und so über Rebbe. Ich habe ein Problem. Rebbe sagt, aha, was ist das Problem? Und der Rebbe halt, und der Rebbe halt, und der Rebbe sagt, und sagt am Rebbe, der Rebbe sagt, ich habe ein Mädel, was ich habe, aber es gibt ein Schicksal. Tragt, als was der Rebbe wird sagen, ist, weil wie die Sorge, wie der Rebbe ist. Der Rebbe sagt dem Herzgott, ich bin dir Mekane. Der Herzgott, sagt dem der Rebbe. Wenn der Eberster will, als der Mensch wird gehen, gibt ihm eine Leiter, ein Sulam. Was ist der Leiter? Nisoy. Wenn der Eberster gibt dir eine Nisoy, zu haben Chassene mit der Schicksal, gibt dir eine Leiter und glaubt, he trusts you, der Rebbe gesagt mit dem in English. He trusts you, as you can, אתה יכול, du kannst, איך אומרים לעמוד, beistein der Nissen. Und der Robert gesagt, ich will dir Mekane, weil ich hab nicht gehabt, der Messiah. Erste Welt. Ich will mit keinem, was ich nicht glaube. Du hast eine Leiter zu gehäuben. Und der bist der Trastio, als du kennst Deutschland. Und der hat mir gesagt, der hat uns ausgegangen gegangen. Gegangen und in Samstag, ich sehe da in Samstag über Eugen. Dann geht Hier stehe ich in der Seite noch rein oder weg. Ich gehe, ich nehme mir ein bisschen trinkt da Maschine. Das ist wir gehen Geld und der nimmt dann aber geht er heute. Ich doch weh, 20, 25. Und der erste Werte, was mir gesagt, finito. But finito in Italy is was redt mit mir verstanden, das redt mich mit mir. Kommen heim in Belgium. Ich bin nach Richt zu sein Schützele. Du bist sehr fein, du bist sehr wohl, aber es ist nicht von mir. Und ich fahre zu etwas wir kommen zu antworten. Ich habe gewollt wissen, wie rief, hin. Aber wir kommen so Stube geschrieben. Dann kommt so zurück, dann Yeshiva, der Kassene. Aber 4-6 Wochen gemacht habe, Bar Mitzvah und Leben.
So that would be an example, as the Rebbe put it. An individual was faced with a challenge, a nisayon. But we discovered what a nisayon is. A nisayon is that, here we go. A nisayon is that opportunity to be raised up, to be lifted up. Nisayon is the nes, is the chance to be raised higher than where we started. Is a chance to go be elevated, as the Rebbe tells him, when God wants somebody to be elevated, he gives them a ladder. He gives them a ladder in the form of a challenge. When we overcome that challenge, when the deeper part of our soul is revealed, we are in a higher place, and we actually bring our entire world to a higher place. So this Shabbos, we celebrate the previous Rebbe who exemplified that, demonstrated how a Jew stands tall and stands strong no matter what the opposition, no matter what the challenge or the test that he faces in his commitment to God. Nevertheless, he stands tall and proud to overcome that. And it's time for us to stop and think about what challenges do we have and what kind of lemons did God throw our way that test our commitment to what's right, to what's moral, to what's godly, to what's according to the Torah. And remember that when we'll stand proud and tall and overcome them, we are being raised up closer to God and changing this world, making this world the place of the Mashiach. Let's all do our best and